I'm going to do a little bit different and do this on a YouTube. The main topic of this week's readings was on teaching strategies, and those are really important to have a good repertoire of all the strategies that are out there that you feel are going to be the best ones to meet the objectives that you really want to accomplish. So it's really aligning everything together to make sure that the strategies are what's going to make the learning occur. Some of the benefits of learning outcomes are that because you know what you want the students to learn, you will pick the content that's specifically directed at that learning outcome. The development of the instructional strategy is going to be key in being able to deliver the content in a way that's going to promote the best learning. So developing and selecting the instructional materials, really helps in constructing that type of learning, an instrument that you can also then say, how am I going to assess and evaluate that the learning has occurred through the instructional materials that I have used, through the instructional strategy that I have used. And, really, a lot of it will be on testing the content that was delivered. The 5 questions for instructional design are, what do you want the student to be able to do? So there again, we're starting out with that backwards design piece of the outcome. What does the student need to know in order to do this well? Well, that's your curriculum. Okay, it's all the planning. What activity will facilitate the learning is that pedagogical style, which is, again, the teaching method. And how is the student going to demonstrate that learning? Okay, so it all ties in together that you cannot plan a class without having answered all of those questions. Connecting theory to the teaching strategy is another thing that you really have to consider, because that is going to be what drives your outcome. So what theoretical stance are you going to help the student to construct the knowledge? Or is it something like a pathophysiology course where you have to think of more like that cognitive information processing that you want them to develop? Or is it something that's more of a group social type of learning situation? So you really have to connect the theory to the teaching strategy, and that's going to be really important whenever you're thinking about a teaching strategy, is to think about what theoretical framework is this strategy from. And that way you can think of the strategy that's going to be best be used to meet that outcome. And again, everything really is outcome driven. Merlot Pedagogy Portal, which is on your Moodle page, is an excellent reference and resource for teaching strategies. And what I really like about it is that it truly does break it down into different categories, like how, if you're going to be using clickers, that's more of an active thing, but it can also, help with cognition. So you click on where the clicker use is. It has experiential learning. It has games and experiments and simulations and critical thinking exercises and active learning. So it really is important to take the time to go through and read on all of these different strategies and have them then in your repertoire, or know where they are as a reference, so that when you're planning a class, you can look at the kinds of strategies that you could use to be able to get that good outcome. This is more on that Merlot page, and you can see it's got learning communities and lecture strategies. The lecture is not something that is totally that you shouldn't do anymore. I mean, sometimes you just have to teach. You have to give the information that the students can relate to, because you are the one that has it. So if you're teaching a really difficult concept that you need to really talk to the students about, you can give it in a lecture format, but it shouldn't be total lecture. You should do questioning while you're doing it. You should have little activities after maybe 40 minutes at the most of lecture, and then do an activity and help the students to be able to apply and make those connections. That's really what's important. There's team-based learning also in teaching with cases, and problem-based learning and social networking tools. So again, a lot of different ways that you can present that information. And like I said, sometimes you just do have to give a little bit of lecture. When I'm teaching obstetrics, I have to go through and provide the students with some basic content. I'll ask them, what do you remember about reproduction? And a lot of times they'll deny knowing anything, even though I know they know. And then I'll bring out some of the things that I know they know and have them relate to the new context that we're going to talk about it under. So I do tell them things, and in a way, it is a form of a lecture. So when it has to be done, it has to be done. But students are used to being lectured at all the time and then not using the material till they study for a test. And they don't really necessarily make those connections the way that we would like. So having time in classrooms to provide those opportunities to make the connections and show them how to use the material is always going to be beneficial. On also that Merlot page, when you do hit on the teaching strategies, there's a space that you can get to, which will talk about a lot of different lecture strategies, so that you can see that you can design smart lectures that can be interactive and have student participation, and also then, will help you with how am I going to assess that this information and content has been delivered in an appropriate manner and that the students have learned it and have met the outcomes that you intended. The University of Minnesota has a wonderful website on teaching strategies. Here's that website from Minnesota, the University of Minnesota, and you can see you'll get onto some basic active learning strategies. Things like icebreakers, think, pair, share, write, pair, share, student summaries, question and answer pairs, 1-minute papers where at the end you can just say, okay, I want you to just take 1 minute and write what you think the most important thing that you learned today. Focus listings, make them list some of the concepts that they thought that were important. Scenarios and case studies, of course. Reciprocal questioning, asking each other questions about what they learned. There's roundtable, problem-based learning, 10-2 strategy, which I would even have to look up. I don't even remember what that one is, but shared brainstorming. But all you have to do is click on any one of these active learning strategies, and it'll give you information on how to do it and when it's appropriate to use it. Again, you have to match them and align them with what outcome you're looking for, and then also develop what kind of assessment you're going to see if the learning has occurred. This is a process from Duncan and Biddle, who are, older authors. One of their textbooks is kind of old, but it really does show you all the different characteristics and things you have to consider, when you're teaching, and what are those pre-stage things? What are the things that are there that you really don't have any control over? And that would be one of the things would be who's teaching the class. The age of the teacher, the gender of the teacher, what their education experience is, what their sociocultural background is, what their personality traits are, and what the knowledge of the subject are all going to have effect. The context then is the setting. What grade level is being taught? What is the subject matter? And what are the student characteristics? What previous experience have they had? What previous education have they had? What life experiences? What sociocultural history? What's going on in the world around that could affect the teaching. Then there's the actual process, which is the teacher behavior and the student behavior and the teacher-student interaction, and what strategies that you're going to choose can also be related to the things that we just covered as far as the pre-stage, the context, and the process. And then after that, what is that product? What is the student achieving of the educational objectives? And we do have to look at all the domains, cognitively, affectively, and psychomotor. So it all does relate, and it's not linear, although it looks linear in this diagram. I'm trying to show that it is a continuous process, because you always have to then consider, all right, what is it about the teacher's education that maybe they didn't know the correct teaching strategy, so then we have to do something about it and change that pre-stage character. Obviously, you can't change the age or gender, but you can do some things about the knowledge of the subject and the experience and the education. So the things that you can change and improve on, that's certainly what you want to do. Subject matter. All right, this next slide shows the alignment of outcomes. What is the university's overall core goals? And right at our school, they're to educate and inspire servant leaders and to be a premier Christian university with global impact. Then we have certain values that we have to instill, and we'll go through all. So if it's the School of Education, or if it's the mathematics department, or if it's the counseling department, everyone has certain objectives in aesthetic literacy, self-understanding, social responsibility, spirituality, scientific literacy, effective communication, and critical thinking that has to be considered in all of the classes and courses objectives. Then you look at your specific school. So how did we specifically apply those university outcomes to each program? And we have ours, and you'll see on every syllabus, by graduation, the MSN student will evidence aesthetic literacy by graduation, the MSN will evidence scientific literacy by. And that's how we build the outcomes and we have to put in the exact strategy that we're going to use to make sure that outcome is going to be met, and then how the assessment is going to be done to also measure. So there's a big correlation between the program outcomes that relate to the specific course objectives. So we look at what in that particular course is going to meet best those type of objectives. Like you can think of research course is really going to be very heavy on the scientific literacy type of course. So things like that. So the class objectives are going to be more specific and really designed more as to the exact measurement of, okay, in this class you will learn how to, and then, okay, I kind of ended that one on a, just quickly. Anyways, this is really going to be the end of this experiment, and I'm just experimenting with some different kinds of technology, and that's what you really need to do too, is to experiment with different types of technology in teaching. And I put up some sites that can help you in doing that, and just really, I know I always put a lot of resources up there, but they're really how I really go and look all the time to see what can I do to be a little bit more creative, to make it a little bit more interesting, to, you know, tell a story in maybe a different way when we talk about some of those learning theories, so that you hear the content of them a few times, so that really then you'll understand the differences and know that what you want to choose. All right, that's it. Review a lot of that material. Bye.